I didn't know that a single sheet of paper, tucked into my mailbox on an ordinary Thursday, could light a fire that would change an entire neighborhood. But that's exactly what happened. This wasn't just about a grill. It was about power, pride, and a community on the edge of waking up. It was one of those golden afternoons, the kind where the breeze is soft, the sun isn't trying too hard, and everything feels like it's holding its breath before the weekend begins. I had just finished trimming the hedge along our little white fence, gloves still on, clippers in hand, when I spotted it. A plain white envelope sticking out of the mailbox. No stump, no address, just a printed HOA logo and my name below it in neat, robotic font. Innocent enough. I figured it was one of those seasonal newsletters, reminders to water the lawn or repaint the mailbox numbers. I opened it without thinking. But the moment my eyes hit the words, everything stopped. This letter serves as formal notice that your property is in violation of Homeowners Association Regulation 12. B. Regarding unauthorized exterior equipment. Specifically, a permanently placed barbecue grill visible from adjoining properties. You are instructed to remove or conceal said equipment within 7 days to avoid incurring financial penalties. I blinked. Read it again. And again. I turned to look at my patio. There it stood, my grill. My beautiful, well-worn, loyal grill. Positioned just beside our back fence, on a flat stone pad I installed myself 5 years ago. It wasn't huge. It wasn't flashy. It was just ours. The center of birthday cookouts, late-night burgers, and neighborhood laughter. It had been there for years without issue. Suddenly, it was a violation. Suddenly, it was a target. My stomach twisted. The kind of twist that comes when you know something's wrong. Not just technically, but morally wrong. This wasn't about safety or aesthetics. This was someone, somewhere, flexing their power from behind a desk and a printed rulebook. I carried the letter inside, still stunned, still reading the legal jargon over and over. My wife was drying dishes, humming to herself. I handed her the paper wordlessly. She read it. Then her eyes met mine. You're kidding. Nope. They want to get rid of that, she said, glancing out the window at the grill. After 6 years? Apparently, it's suddenly too visible. We both knew something wasn't adding up. I spent that night lying awake, staring at the ceiling fan. My mind raced with memories. Summer cookouts with neighbors dropping by just for a bite and staying for hours. My kids learned to flip their first pancakes on that flat top. That one night we grilled marshmallows under a thunderstorm warning and laughed until we cried. That grill was more than a cooking tool. It was a piece of our family, a reason for people to come together, a little bit of joy in a world that doesn't hand it out so freely. And now, some invisible committee wanted to erase it. The next morning, I started digging, literally and figuratively. I pulled out the HOA handbook from that dusty kitchen drawer where we keep appliance warranties and leftover birthday candles. Section 12B was vague. It mentioned permanent fixtures, visibility from adjacent lots, and something about architectural harmony, but nothing specific enough to make this feel fair. That afternoon, I called the HOA office. After being transferred twice and listening to a tinny-holed version of Pachelbel's canon, I finally got a real person. I just received a violation notice about my grill. I explained, calmly but firmly. Yes, the woman on the line said, Regulation 12B. You'll need to remove or cover the grill within 7 days. But it's portable, on wheels, not built in, and it's been in the same spot for over 6 years. I understand, sir. She replied with the tone of someone who had no intention of understanding anything. But the HOA recently conducted a community-wide compliance audit. Based on what? I'm not at liberty to discuss the criteria. Okay, then who is at liberty? A pause. You'll need to bring your concerns to the board. She gave me the name of the board chair, Margaret Caldwell. I recognized the name. She was the lady who wore oversized sunglasses at every HOA meeting and once suggested banning inflatables on lawns because they're undignified. Of course, I scheduled a meeting, but something had already shifted inside me. This wasn't just about a grill anymore. And that's how it all started. A piece of mail, a backyard grill, and the moment I realized the rules weren't just inconvenient, they were wrong. But I wasn't going down without a fight. In part 2, I'll take you back to how this grill became a symbol for something so much bigger. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next chapter of this incredible neighborhood showdown. Because this wasn't just a barbecue. It became a movement. Before it became the reason I stood in front of the HOA board with the community at my back, that grill had a quieter story. One of birthdays, late-night burgers, quiet grief, and unexpected friendship. This wasn't just steel and propane, it was ours. And in trying to take it away, the HOA messed with something much deeper. You don't realize how something becomes part of your life until someone threatens to take it away. That grill didn't arrive with a marching band or a ribbon cutting. It came in a dented box from a spring clearance sale at Home Depot. It took me 3 hours to assemble it with shaky hands and missing screws, a manual that read like ancient scripture, and one very confused toddler handed me the wrong tools. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, and I didn't know it then, but that was the start of something sacred. It was the first thing I really built in our new house, a symbol that we weren't just homeowners, we were home. My wife and I had moved into the neighborhood with high hopes and low expectations. We'd come from a crowded city where backyard space was measured in square feet and grilling required balancing a mini hibachi on a fire escape. Here, in the suburbs, we had a real yard, real trees, a patio I could walk barefoot on. It didn't take long before I realized I wanted more than just space. I wanted connection. So I fired up the grill. That first summer, I hosted a tiny 4th of July cookout. Just us, a couple of nervous neighbors, and some hot dogs. It was quiet, simple, and perfect. A few months later, we had burgers going during a football game. Someone brought drinks. Someone else brought a folding table. The grill didn't just feed us. It drew people out of their homes, gave them a reason to stop and stay. Over time, the smell of char and mesquite became a sort of neighborhood beacon. Then came the birthday parties. My daughter turned 5 that fall, and all she wanted was hot dogs and chalk art in the driveway. So I grilled 20 hot dogs, passed out colored chalk, and let the neighborhood kids turn the pavement into a rainbow. Parents lingered longer than expected. One dad helped me flip burgers. A mom showed me her secret for seasoning pineapple slices. That day, I looked around and realized something. The grill wasn't just a convenience, it was the glue. It became part of the rhythm of our lives. When we lost my wife's father a few years later, it was the grill that gave us a quiet way to grieve. I remember standing there with her brother, both of us flipping steaks in silence. Tears in our eyes, but faces turned toward the fire. Grief is strange. It doesn't always need words. Sometimes all it needs is warmth and smoke and something to do with your hands. There were Sunday dinners where my kids tried grill master duties and ended up nearly setting marshmallows ablaze. There were Friday nights with friends and beers and music too loud for Margaret Caldwell's taste. There were quiet moments, too. Me alone with a chicken thigh and the sound of cicadas, reflecting on how lucky I was to have this space. It wasn't a fancy grill, no Bluetooth thermometer or infrared burners. But it worked, and it lived. Like a good cast iron pan or an old baseball glove, it soaked in the stories. And maybe, just maybe, that's what the HOA hated most. Because that grill belonged. Not to the HOA's vision of bland uniformity, but to us. It had weathered storms, greased fires, and more than one dropped burger. But it had also built something. It had built trust. Neighbors started stopping by, just to say hi, and left with full bellies. I knew their names. I knew their kids' names. I knew when someone got sick or lost a job or welcomed a baby. All because of the grill. And when that letter arrived, the one that threatened to erase it all, I didn't just feel attacked. I felt like the HOA was trying to erase the very soul of our block. But here's the thing about soul. It doesn't go quietly. This wasn't about a rule or a regulation. It was about what happens when people finally say, that's enough. In part 3, we'll dive into the moment everything shifted, the planning, the whispers, and how one simple cookout turned into a full-blown backyard rebellion. If you've ever been pushed too far by people in power, you'll want to hear this. Sometimes rebellion starts with raised fists, and sometimes it starts with smoked ribs. When my HOA came for my grill, I didn't throw punches. I threw a party. And that's when everything changed. The letter sat on our fridge like a storm warning, but instead of prepping for disaster, my wife and I were planning something entirely different. "This is ridiculous," she said for the 100th time as we sat on a back patio. "You've grilled here for 6 years." They've never said a word. "I guess I'm suddenly afraid I muttered. Then, out of nowhere, she laughed, an actual, full laugh that echoed into the night. "You know what we should do?" "What?" "We should throw the biggest barbecue this street has ever seen. If they're going to fine you for it, make it worth it." It was a joke at first, but jokes are funny like that. Sometimes they plant seeds. And this one, it sprouted overnight. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if we did it? Not just as a protest, but as a message. What if we brought the whole neighborhood together? Not with picket signs, but with brisket. The next morning, I pulled out my phone and sent a message in the neighborhood group chat, an old thread we hadn't used since the last block party, back before everything got quiet and cold. "This Sunday, my yard, burgers, brats, and barbecue. The HOA says my grill's a problem, so let's make it the main event. Bring your chairs, bring your families, bring your appetite." I stared at it for a second. Then I hit send that I expected silence. Instead, within minutes, the replies started rolling in. "Count us in. I'll bring wings." About time someone stood up to them. "I've got a cooler and a cornhole set. Let's do this." Even the quiet neighbors, the ones who kept their blinds drawn and their lawns too perfect, started replying. It was like striking a match in a dark room. By the next day, I had people volunteering to smoke ribs, bake pies, run extension cords for string lights. Mrs. Johnson, our neighborhood's unofficial matriarch, offered to bring her famous potato salad. Mr. Avery, a retired vet with a heart of gold, texted, "I haven't used a smoker since my grandson's birthday. But for this, let's fire it up." And then came the kids. They started drawing signs with sidewalk chalk. "Let him grill. Barbecue equals freedom. Steaks, not fines." One kid drew a cartoon of me holding a spatula like a sword, standing atop a flaming grill like a comic book hero. There was something beautiful unfolding, something that went far beyond seasoning and charcoal. The community was waking up. People who had once tiptoed around HOA rules were now stepping forward. They weren't angry. They were ready. Ready to laugh again, to gather, to eat and live and breathe without fear of being reported for leaving up Halloween decorations too long or planting flowers outside the official approved color palette. It wasn't about defiance. It was about belonging. We organized like a grassroots campaign. One neighbor made flyers and taped them to mailboxes. Another set up a music playlist. Someone offered folding tables and chairs. We divided up dishes, side items, drinks. My wife, ever the commander, made a spreadsheet and passed around walkie-talkies. And me? I cleaned that grill until it gleamed like defiance in the sun. But not everyone was on board. That Thursday, 2 members of the HOA came by to check on landscaping. I caught them taking pictures of my patio. "Problem?" I asked. "No problem at all," one of them said, smiling like a snake. "Just making sure everything's up to code." They knew. They heard. And they weren't happy. A few hours later, another email landed in my inbox. "Mr. Palmer, it has come to our attention that a large-scale event is being organized at your residence. Please be advised that gatherings exceeding 10 attendees require prior authorization. Unauthorized use of exterior cooking equipment remains in violation of HOA policy." That was their warning shot. Mine would come on Sunday. Loudspeaker ending, CTA. What started as a violation turned into a movement. And in part 4, the barbecue begins. Ribs hit the grill. Neighbors show up in force, and the HOA? Well, they show up too. It's not just a cookout. It's a standoff. So don't miss what happens next. Some people go to war with picket signs. I went to war with pulled pork. The HOA thought a few fines would shut me down, but on that Sunday, I lit the grill, and the neighborhood lit up with it. What happened next? It was something they never saw coming. Sunday started earlier than most. The sun was barely peeking over the rooftops, and already the neighborhood buzzed with quiet anticipation. Folding chairs clattered onto driveways. Coolers were dragged from garages. Kids skipped past with balloons and chalk. I could smell mesquite before I even finished my coffee. By 9 a.m., My backyard looked like a barbecue base camp. Brisket was already slow smoking in a neighbor's custom-built offset pit. Sausages sizzled on a flat top borrowed from the church kitchen. Someone rolled in with trays of marinated chicken skewers that looked like they belonged in a cooking magazine. My wife stood at the center of it all, clipboard in one hand, tongs in the other, directing setup like a general before battle. Brisket zone is cleared. Dessert table goes by the fence. Music crew, check your speakers. By 11 a.m., it wasn't just my yard, it was the entire block. Canopies stretched across driveways. Tables connected like a giant, colorful picnic snake weaving through the street. People brought out dining chairs, beach loungers, even a sofa. Someone rolled down the sidewalk like a parade float. Signs were everywhere. Grill rights are human rights. Steaks before snakes. Let Palmer grill. And laughter. So much laughter. People I hadn't seen smile in months were now playing cornhole, holding paper plates piled high with ribs and potato salad. Kids drew banners in chalk, one of which showed a grill on a throne, crowned in fire, with the words, "Long live the king." I stood in the middle of it all, wearing my apron that read "Licensed to Grill," flipping burgers surrounded by neighbors, music, and something rare, unity. It felt unstoppable until 12:47 p.m. That's when I heard someone whisper, "They're here." I turned. 3 HOA board members stood at the end of the block, arms folded, clipboards in hand like courtroom judges at a school fair. In the middle of them, like a shark in a khaki sweater, was Margaret Caldwell. She walked with a tight smile and a storm behind her eyes, heels clicking with authority. Her eyes scanned the crowd, the tables, the food, the decorations. She didn't see joy. She saw violations. I stepped out to meet her. "Margaret," I said cheerfully, "you made it. Can I interest you in some smoked turkey or rebellion ribs?" Her lips curled slightly. "This event is in direct violation of HOA policies regarding unauthorized gatherings, noise thresholds, and open flame cooking equipment." "Actually," I replied, pulling a folded paper from my apron, "the fire department inspected the setup yesterday. All extinguishers in place. No open flames unattended. And after the gathering, well, this is just a bunch of friendly neighbors enjoying a Sunday." "You're mocking the board," she snapped. "I'm feeding the street," I said. "If that's a crime, fine me." Behind me, I heard a voice, "Mr. Avery." "I'll pay it." Then Mrs. Patel, "Me too." Then a chorus, "Add me. I've got $20. I'll Venmo you right now." Margaret faltered. She wasn't used to this support. She was used to fear, isolation, whispered compliance, not laughter and burgers and 50 people offering to cover my fine in exchange for brisket. "You're setting a dangerous precedent," she said coldly. "No," I said. "You did that the day you tried to punish Joy." She didn't respond, just scribbled something on her clipboard and turned away. The other board members followed, but not before one of them, Jeff, I think, whispered, "This smells amazing, by the way." And just like that, they were gone. The music turned up. Someone plugged in a karaoke machine. Kids broke into a spontaneous dance-off. And for the next few hours, that street wasn't governed by rules or regulations. It was powered by joy. And my grill? It was the beating heart of it all. I must have flipped 300 burgers that day. I lost count of how many plates I served, how many hands I shook, or how many neighbors looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you. We needed this." One woman teared up as she ate ribs beside her husband. "We used to host dinners like this, but then everything got so stiff. We stopped trying. But you brought it back." That hit me, because I wasn't trying to lead a rebellion. I wasn't trying to make a point. I was just trying to keep the fire lit. What started as a backyard barbecue just became a full-blown movement. But trust me, this story's far from over. In Part 5, the HOA fires back, and the neighborhood has to decide. Do we retreat or rise? They thought it was over when the smoke cleared, but that barbecue was just the beginning. Because the real fire? It wasn't under the grill, it was under the people. And when the HOA pushed harder, the neighborhood pushed back even harder. The barbecue was done. The music had faded. The folding chairs were stacked neatly at the end of the driveway, and the last spark had long since cooled in the grill. You'd think that would be the end. But in truth, it was just the beginning. Monday morning arrived with a sense of calm and purpose until I checked my inbox. Subject: HOA violation escalation notice. Mr. Palmer, it has come to the board's attention that the unauthorized event held on your property this past Sunday involved noise disturbances, obstructed sidewalks, and continued use of exterior equipment in violation of Section 12B. This is considered a multi-point violation. Further noncompliance may result in monetary penalties, legal review, or suspension of HOA membership privileges. Sincerely, Margaret Caldwell, HOA Board Chair. Legal review? Suspension of membership privileges? I stared at the screen, stunned. They weren't just trying to shut down a cookout now. They were trying to make an example out of me. Public enemy number one, with a spatula and a bottle of barbecue sauce. But what they didn't count on, the neighborhood wasn't staying silent anymore. Before I could even finish my coffee, I got my first text. Hey, saw the email. Absolutely ridiculous. Let us know how we can help. Then came another. We're with you. Thinking of calling a neighborhood meeting ourselves. And another. They're cracking down because they're scared. But we're not. That week, my porch became a mailroom. People dropped off letters of support, offers to chip in for legal fees if it came to that, and even home-cooked meals. Yes, actual casseroles like I was a revolutionary recovering from battle. And then came the email that changed everything. Hi, Mr. Palmer. I'm not very vocal in the neighborhood, but I watched what happened from across the street. That barbecue showed me what real community looks like. I've lived here for 9 years, but I've never felt connected until now. I'm ready to stand up with you. Sincerely, Maria Rodriguez. Lot 14-inch. She wasn't alone. Mrs. Johnson started gathering signatures. Not for protest, but for reform. She proposed a revision of the outdated HOA policies, including fire safety regulations and approval timelines that hadn't been updated since flip phones were the norm. Mark, the real estate agent from the end of the block, offered to do a deep dive review of the HOA bylaws. These are loophole-ridden, he said, flipping through his printed packet. Half of this stuff is unenforceable. Even Dave, the guy who once reported a neighbor for leaving a trash bin visible overnight, knocked on my door. He looked awkward, hands in pockets. I was wrong about all this. Let me know if there's a meeting. That moment stunned me more than the email, because something was shifting. The HOA had been operating like a shadow government for years. But when the sunlight hit, when people looked around and realized they had more power than the paper pushers, everything changed. The group chat exploded. People started comparing letters, violations, unfair warnings. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd been hit with vague compliance notices. Mrs. Patel had once been threatened with fines for planting marigolds. A young couple down the street had been told to repaint their shutters for being too bold. The anger didn't become violence. It became momentum. Someone suggested we run for the board. Replace them. Clean house. Give a neighborhood back to the neighborhood. I wasn't sure at first. I never imagined myself sitting behind a desk at HOA meetings. But that's the thing about community. You don't always get to pick the moment. Sometimes the moment picks you. What started with a letter turned into a barbecue, and now a movement. In part 6, the final part, I'll take you into the board meeting that changed everything. Rules were rewritten. Faces turned red, and a neighborhood finally reclaimed its voice. This wasn't just about a grill anymore. It never was. It was about who gets to say what kind of life you live and what happens when a whole neighborhood finally says enough. The HOA board met every first Tuesday of the month in the community library rec room. Usually, the only people who showed up were the board members, a folding table of stale cookies, and maybe one resident who forgot why they came. But not this time. That night, the parking lot was full. Cars lined the curb. Neighbors brought chairs, clipboards, highlighted bylaws. It felt like a town hall, not a board meeting. I walked in with my wife beside me and what felt like the entire street at our backs. The board sat in their usual places. Margaret Caldwell in the center, flanked by the other 2 members like sentries. She had that tight-lipped expression again. You could almost see the tension in her jaw. They were expecting a protest, maybe even shouting. What they got was order, respect, and power, the kind that doesn't yell, but simply refuses to bow. After they went through their dull agenda, budget updates, lawn height reminders. It was time for open community remarks. I stood. I received your violation, I said. I read it carefully, and after reviewing the bylaws, speaking with residents, and, most importantly, hosting one of the most peaceful, joyful events this neighborhood has seen in years, I'm here to say, I won't be removing my grill. Margaret's pen froze above her notes. I continued. More than that, I'm here to propose a motion. A motion to amend Section 12B of our HOA rules to clearly allow non-permanent, responsibly operated outdoor cooking equipment, so long as it meets fire safety guidelines. Mark stood next. Seconded. Mrs. Johnson stood. Third. Then hands went up like dominoes. One after another, people rose, not to argue, but to affirm, to claim back their neighborhood. Margaret tried to object. These rules exist for order and harmony. And community, someone said from the back, which we finally have, thanks to that grill. Another voice called, you work for us, not the other way around. Margaret's power, once rooted in silence and fear, was now a paper sword. She had no authority against a unified street. And deep down, she knew it. The motion passed with overwhelming support. Section 12B was amended on the spot. But it didn't end there. That night, people nominated a new board, diverse, balanced, fair. Mrs. Johnson, Mark, even me. I never saw myself as board material. But after what we'd all been through, I realized leadership isn't about rules, it's about listening and bringing people together. In the months that followed, the neighborhood transformed. No, it didn't turn into some utopia. There were still disagreements, still complaints. But the difference? Now, people talked to each other. They asked. They laughed. They trusted again. The grill? It's still out back. I cleaned it up after that first battle like it was a trophy. But it's not about the medal. It's about what it represents. We've had 2 more block parties since. The kids still draw wild chalk art. One house down even built a second grill station, legally now. And Margaret? She resigned 3 weeks after that meeting. No speech. No fanfare. Just an envelope taped to the clubhouse door. I never wished her harm. I just hoped she'd learn. Because this wasn't about taking sides. It was about choosing people over power. Direct hit, final reflection. What started with one letter became a cookout. What became a cookout became a movement. And that movement reminded us all of one simple truth. If this story fired you up, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. What would you do if your HOA tried to shut down your joy? Share your story. Because here on this channel, every neighbor's voice matters. Speech Balloon Tap like to keep this story alive. Share it if you believe in neighborhood power. And ring that bell. Because more real stories, more real people, and more victories are coming. Stay strong. Stay grilling. And never let anyone tell you that joy needs permission.